Hello my dears, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be discussing victim blaming, and I want to discuss with you whether or not the way in which we talk about victim blaming actually makes women more safe or more vulnerable. So what got me thinking about this was a video that I saw circulating on Twitter or X, whatever it's going by now, in which I saw a woman say this.
We desire protection, but sometimes what we don't understand is that true protection comes with a level of control. Bodyguards are a good example. A bodyguard will make their client leave from a dangerous place. The bodyguard has to know all the details: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And the client has to listen to the bodyguard and follow the instruction that the bodyguard gives them. It's really an agreement between all parties involved. When the person who needs protecting does not follow the instruction and the direction of the protector, it puts the protector in a situation where they're more likely to lose their life. I have 4 brothers and a father, and I listen to their instruction even when they're not around. They have told me to stay away from certain places if I'm by myself or if it's late at night. They've also advised me not to be drunk or high in certain situations. Even though my brothers, my dad, and the men in my life protect me, I in turn protect them by listening to them and following their instruction. They don't have to come to my defense in some wild scenario, because if I listened to them, I wouldn't have been there in the first place.
Now, this video received a lot of criticism from other Black American women, and this is what they had to say.
About Black women and preventive protection, and how if you want someone to...
Everything she said in her other video sounds very familiar, because it sounds like what slave owners used to tell their slaves to keep them from running away, to keep them from getting in danger. You know, if you just listen to me, you know, you won't be in danger. If you just stay on this plantation, there's no danger out there for you to get into. If you just listen to my rules, if you just be where you're supposed to be, if you just do what you're supposed to do, you will be protected. I will protect you. If you just stay on my plantation, I will just protect you. That's just like the girl everybody's talking about that's causing this uproar yet again as to why Black men won't protect Black women. We see that they're just not willing to protect Black women, but yet no, it always comes back to Black women. It always comes back to Black women to deal with why Black women aren't being protected.
Like milk and bananas, calling me old.
So she posted a video yesterday. If you know, you know. You can go back and watch that video, but it's gonna piss y'all off because it pissed me off. And the other video that she posted gonna piss y'all off too. So I'm telling y'all now. But she basically said that she got unaliving threats, and I'm not sure if it was from just women and men. But then she also went on to double down on what she said. She said that if you're put in a preventable situation, basically, like, that's on you. Because if you knew that situation was going to be bad, you should have avoided that. Now, she can definitely say the same thing for herself, because she knew that speaking opposite of what was going on was definitely going to be a bad move. Because you, as a Black woman, you should know that sometimes there are preventable situations and sometimes they are not. Most of the time, they are not. You literally don't know if someone is going to take advantage of you when you wake up that morning or when you go on a date with that person. Like we all know how irrational and surprising men can be.
All of these videos were in relation to another video that is currently circulating the internet, in which a woman describes how she was hit in the face with a brick after she allegedly refused to give a man her number. Within the video, the woman berates the men around her for doing nothing while she was being assaulted. Later on, a video started circulating of a man who was present when the woman was assaulted with the brick, and this is what he had to say.
I was one of the guys who was there that did not help her when she was getting hit with the brick, right? I feel like people need to know the whole story before they start commenting and say things they don't understand or they don't know. You guys don't even remember who you guys are trying to defend, who you guys are trying to speak up for. This is the same woman that was going around smacking white people in the streets. She's not innocent. She was actually taunting the guy to hit her. Why would I go defend somebody that's actually looking for trouble? This woman, she is literally a troublemaker. Everybody that knows her in our community knows she's a troublemaker. I'm not going to risk my life over somebody that's actually out there looking for trouble. If you go on social media, online, you're going to see some of her antic videos, taunting people, looking for a reaction. Well, she got what she been looking for, and you guys are giving her the attention that she was actually seeking for.
Something that both of these two videos have in common is the accusation of victim blaming. Within the first video, the woman was accused of victim blaming for suggesting that women should take precautions and listen to the men in their lives in order to avoid male violence. Within the second video, the man was accused of victim blaming for implying that the woman's personality and character is why she ended up being assaulted. The topic of victim blaming is one that I find really interesting because on one hand, I understand why we have a hypersensitivity to it. For decades, feminists have been very critical of the criminal justice system, particularly in regards to how it handles violence against women. One of the things that they argue is that we too often blame women for the violence that they experience at the hands of men, especially when it comes to things like sexual assault. The problem with the hypersensitivity that we've created around victim blaming, though, does mean that it's made it very, very difficult for us to have very needed conversations. Kathleen Stock released an article for the Sunday Times in which she stated, "Someone needs to tell young women what sort of world they live in and how best to defend themselves accordingly. Imperfect, certainly, but still better than nothing. Contrary to popular belief, this isn't always the same thing as telling women that if they don't listen to sensible advice, they have no right to complain about whatever happens next." Within the article, she references a statement made by Andre Giambruno. I probably pronounced that wrong, but listen, I tried. Okay? He was accused of victim blaming for saying the following statement: "If you go dancing, you have every right to get drunk. But if you avoid getting drunk and losing your senses, you might also avoid running into certain problems because then you risk finding the wolf." Now, he was criticized by feminists. One politician named Cecilia D'Elia stated that we must teach boys to show respect, not girls to be prudent. Teach them the value of consent, not girls the value of mistrust. The topic of alcohol consumption and violence is one that's been going on for a long time now. We've got a lot of data that shows that there's a strong correlation between alcohol consumption and violent incidents. Yet despite us knowing this, we still have no idea how to appropriately address this reality. We still struggle to address this positive correlation, especially when it comes to the topic of sexual violence. Chanel Miller is a young woman who was sexually assaulted in 2015 by Brooke Allen Turner. Miller had been partying and she had gotten intoxicated to the point of blacking out. While she was unconscious, Turner sexually assaulted her behind a bin. Turner was spotted by two men who were passing by. The two men came to help Miller and they restrained Turner until the police arrived to ensure that he was arrested. They also testified against him in court to help make sure that he was put behind bars. Some people were very critical of Miller because of her highly intoxicated state, and this is something that she addressed within her interview, and this is what she said.
"I was not assaulted because I was drunk. I was assaulted because he chose to assault me. He essentially said, I want what I want, and I don't care what you want." And what's fascinating to me is that because it happened at a fraternity, people almost treated it like a given. They said, well, of course this happens. And I was the variable who was expected to change. They said, well, this wouldn't have happened, if you had just had less to drink. And I continue to say, it would have happened. It just would have happened to somebody else and not me. I'm not interested in self-protection or self-preservation. I'm interested in everybody's safety. And when you continue to go after the victim, then you're not reducing the number of sexual assaults. You're letting them run rampant. And meanwhile, you're hurting and berating her. So then we won't go anywhere.
I agree with Miller that a person who is capable of doing that is capable of doing it to anyone, and no amount of intoxication justifies what happened to her. And I also think that we need to have a very honest conversation about the reality that intoxication does increase a woman's vulnerability. As Kathleen Stock said, we need to be honest about the type of world we live in. And while I can appreciate Cecilia's sentiment that we should be teaching young men to be respectful and to value consent, the unfortunate problem with the feminist approach of solely focusing on the perpetrator, while it's well-intentioned, it does unfortunately fail women. And the reason why it fails women is because men who are capable of doing this do not care about consent, and nor do they care about respect. Does Cecilia believe that these men only assault women because they don't know it's wrong to assault women? Every man in our society knows it's wrong to assault a woman while she's unconscious. Every man knows it's wrong to be sexually violent. And yet, despite that, it still happens. If simply telling someone not to do something or simply telling someone not to commit a crime was enough to stop them from committing that crime, our prisons would be empty. Having a cultural attitude that discourages this kind of behavior and having a cultural attitude that makes it unthinkable to do such acts does work for the vast majority of people, because the vast majority of people are good and the vast majority of men are good, such as the two men who helped Miller and helped to ensure that the man who attacked her was put behind bars. But what do we do about the predatory few, the ones who have no regard for what feminists believe about consent or what they believe about respect, the ones who have zero regard for what the law tells them they can and can't do? Is it really that unreasonable to suggest that women take certain precautions to avoid being victimized by such people? The unfortunate truth is there are violent people in the world. We need to have an honest conversation about what we can do to try and reduce our risk of being harmed by such people. Why do you lock your front door? Why do you lock your car? Why do you put your seatbelt on when you get inside of your car? We do all these things because we understand that bad things happen sometimes, and so we try and take precautions to try and reduce bad outcomes by controlling the things that we can. Bad things can still happen even if you take precautions. However, does that justify taking no precautions at all? Yes, sure, even if you lock your front door, someone could still break inside it. But does that justify leaving your door wide open all night? Because after all, if someone was going to burgle your house, they would burgle it anyway, right? But does that mean you need to make their job easier? We need to accept that two things can be true at the same time, and that we can also do two things at the same time. Yes, we should absolutely focus on making sure that the perpetrators of these crimes do have severe punishment, and we also need to maintain a cultural attitude that makes doing these crimes unthinkable. Simultaneously, we also need to be able to have real and brutally honest conversations with the people who are the most likely to be victims of these crimes, of all of the different precautions they can take to try and help to reduce their risk. If I had a son who was going to go out drinking, I would tell him to be careful, because we know that alcohol increases the likelihood of violence, and for men this usually looks like fist fights and in some cases stabbings, etc. These kind of things do unfortunately happen when alcohol is added into the mix. So I would tell him to absolutely be careful and watch his back for that, to try and avoid any trouble. Why is it unreasonable for me to also tell my daughter to be mindful of how much alcohol she's consuming so that she doesn't put herself in a vulnerable state for someone who is predatory and willing to take advantage of women? So in conclusion, I personally think that our fear and our hypersensitivity to the accusation of victim blaming has made it very, very hard for us to have these conversations, these very, very needed conversations. So ultimately, unless we are willing to have brutally honest conversations about this subject, can we truly say that we are doing our best to keep women safe? And this is a question I'm going to pose to you in the comments. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on this. Do you agree with me that our fear of being accused of victim blaming has made it difficult for us to have these brutally honest conversations, and as a result makes it harder for us to protect women? Or do you disagree with me and my conclusion in this video? Either way, I would be very, very curious to know what your thoughts are on this subject. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, then you may as well like and subscribe. I am also on other socials, and I do also make music if you would like to check that out. Links to all of that will be in my description box. Thank you so much for giving me your time today, and I will see you in my next video.